Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 22nd, 2017, 5:30 meeting of the Titusville City Council. We have a quorum. Call the meeting to order. I don't see a minister out there, so if you will join me in a moment of silence, please. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is special recognitions and presentations. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, before we get started, we have an additional addendum item to add. It's the Police Department Spotlight. So we'll call that Agenda Item H, if Council will approve that.
Do we need to vote on that or just consensus?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm sorry? Yes.
Move to approve Item H to being added to the agenda.
Have a second?
Second.
Anybody in favor say I can't. I'm having trouble with my voice tonight. Anybody in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Same sign. Passed unanimously.
Item 4A is recognition of Connor McBride from the Titusville Fire Department Emergency Services as Employee of the Month for June 2017. I believe Chief Woodward has a presentation recognizing it, and looks like our guys are on the go again.
Sometimes they don't let us get a break.
Sure.
But no, this is a good time. I'd like to thank Mayor and Council for allowing us the opportunity to recognize one of our employees. And you always hear that in the line of public service, especially in public safety, you're never really off the job. This holds true in the case with firefighter paramedic Connor McBride. On his way into work one day, early June, he lives out in Satellite Beach. He was driving over the Melbourne Causeway, and he happened to notice a young gentleman in military fatigues standing on the side of the bridge. And he was, something didn't look right with it, so he pulled over, stopped, got out, and his gut instinct led him to the gentleman was looking to commit suicide. He was looking to jump off the bridge. And Connor took it upon himself to not only notify 911, but also contact and go up and make contact with the gentleman. And he established a rapport with the guy that even when law enforcement and the fire from down in that area showed, Connor was able to still maintain that rapport and actually get the gentleman to kind of back away and talk him down basically off of the bridge. And it goes to show that, you know, the compassion, you never really know when your time is going to be called or when you're going to make an impact on someone else's life. But in this case, Connor definitely made an impact on this gentleman's life. And as a result, as far as we know today, this gentleman is still there. And Connor has even maintained contact with this guy after the fact to make sure that he's still doing okay. So on behalf of the department and all the first responders, I'd like to congratulate Connor on his award of being the Employee of the Month for June 2017 for the City of Titusville. It's got your plaque and your gift certificate and stuff in it.
Thank you for a job well done.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Connor.
Next item, sir.
Yes, sir. And to recognize the July 2017 Employee of the Month is Chief Woodward, I believe, or no, Chief Lau will be doing the presentation for Officer George Cabranes.
I'll sing for you if you want.
I just asked if he knew how to sing. I was going to ask him to sing. So, Mayor, Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to recognize one of our true up-and-comers, Officer Cabranes. I would like to think that back when I was his age, I even had half of his energy, but I don't think I did. So back the very end of May of this year, we were dispatched to what appeared to be a vehicle burglary in progress. And the homeowner heard voices, went outside, and upon her going outside, they scurried. So Officer Cabranes got to the scene, but didn't just pull right up, parked around the block, came in on foot, and started tracing the footsteps of the burglars, and noticed a couple of dome lights on. And once again, technology, to his knowledge, most dome lights are timed out. So he figured if they were still on, the bad guys were very near, and he was correct. So 3 of them went scurrying. So did Officer Cabranes, catching one, and ultimately getting confessions on multiple burglaries and the names of the others, and all 3 were held accountable. So it's for that and for everything else that he does that he's been named our July Employee of the Month. Congratulations. You get that.
I don't know how that works.
Sometimes I don't know how it works. Don't feel bad. Thanks for a job well done.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Get my exercise. Next item, sir.
Yes, sir. The Titusville Police Department, along with the city manager and council, is recognizing Titusville Police Explorer Chief Celestial McBride for being named the 2017 Explorer of the Year for the Florida Association of Police Explorers. It's a great honor to have you here this evening and to represent our city so well, and to be named this is an exceptional award. So please come forward. We'd like to recognize you.
Very brief overview. I guess McBride is the name to have today. But Celestial has been with us for 6 years, since she's 14. She's 20 years of age and just months away from her bachelor's at UCF. And from there, she's going to be attending Duke to PhD? PhD, and would like to get into federal law enforcement. So clearly she is in the right area. But a little brief thing on the Explorers. The Explorers have been near and dear to Titusville's heart for quite some time. And it's just an opportunity to reach some of our youth that might have an interest in going into this type of field, and even those who don't want to go into law enforcement do very well. But of the competing explorers in the state of Florida, there was more than 300, but there's thousands among the state. And so this Explorer of the Year is quite an achievement, and we are very, very, very proud of Celestial. Congratulations.
You wanted to make sure you didn't miss it because you were here half hour early. Nobody else was in here. Next item, sir.
At the April 26, 2016 City Council directed staff to initiate changes to the urban mixed-use UMU zoning district to facilitate the city's goal of becoming a trail town and capitalize on the opportunities of the coast-to-coast connector. The goal of this amendment is to allow for reuse of property to create a walkable, pedestrian-focused environment that is amenable to the property owners, residents within the UMU zoning district, and the users of the trail. At a public workshop with staff and interested citizens was held on February 16, 2017. The general consensus was non-automobile-oriented uses should be allowed on any property in the UMU zoning district, provided certain minimum conditions are met. This consensus continued at a public meeting held with the Planning and Zoning Commission on 5 July 2017. Staff is here to give you a presentation on the activities to date and the next steps forward to complete this initiative. We have from our Planning Department, Trevor Trevagan is going to run you through a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks for the opportunity to present a little bit of what we've been working on. Can I get the presentation? Thank you. So, as the city manager said, we've been working on an update to one of our zoning districts, the allowable uses, regulations, things such as that. And really the main goal of this is to accommodate the coast-to-coast trail and make the reuse of property feasible in that area. And so, okay, so here, as I said, the purpose to accommodate the coast-to-coast trail and its users. Just a little background, we've been working on this since about April of last year. We had a public meeting earlier this year with just staff and some concerned citizens or interested citizens. It was a productive meeting. We got a fairly good consensus out of everyone. And then we continued that interaction with the community and the Planning and Zoning Commission earlier in July of this year. And so the public consensus that came out of the original public meeting and also the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting were basically around these few areas. The allowable uses should be expanded. People wanted to be able to reuse their properties in ways that they're not currently allowed to do so based on the zoning designation. Safety of the residents and also the users of the trail. Lighting was a concern that was brought up by many people that attended the meeting. Aesthetics of some of the properties in the area and what could be done to improve that. Reinvestment and redevelopment within the area. We have some people that are beginning that process of redeveloping and rehabbing some of those properties. And so they wanted to make sure that could be continued and they could continue to invest in their properties. And everyone felt that the trail would bring increased property values in that area as well with the influx of people that would be coming through kind of this area. So to give you a little background or a little bit of an overview, the area that you see here, that's an aerial image of the area that's designated with the UMU zoning district. So it's generally the area west of downtown here. The southern border is Pine Street. The western border is Park Avenue. The northern border generally follows somewhat of Orange Street, and then the coast-to-coast trail, which is illustrated with the purple line on the screen. And then the eastern boundary is the Florida East Coast Railway. And just to give you kind of an idea, this is a map that illustrates all of the different uses of the property in that area. So the yellows and oranges basically represent single-family and multifamily uses. The red is commercial uses, and the purple is industrial uses. And so you can see there's a wide variety of different ways that properties in that area are being utilized. And the regulations now are very stringent on where new commercial property can be or new commercial uses can be established. And so what we're focusing on through this change is to allow some of these other some of these other properties to be either developed with commercial uses or a mix of uses, whatever best suits the location of the property. And so just to give you, again, an idea of kind of what's going on in that area now, we have one of the properties at 715 Tropic Street. It's been rehabilitated and it is moving forward with a local historic designation. So there is reinvestment and redevelopment happening in that area, and we're hoping that continues. And so I went the other day and rode around that area and took a few pictures just to kind of demonstrate some of what's going on. So this is a picture at the intersection of Dummit and Main Street looking south. So you can see that there's a single family home there on the left. On the right, we have a property that's being used kind of for industrial uses with vehicles, things like that stored outside. And then just to the right of this photo is Boggs Gases. And then this image here is on Canaveral Street looking north at Main, basically towards the end of that street and the current terminus of the trail. And I thought this was interesting. I went down and noticed that people are kind of starting to make their own markings on the concrete barricades at the end. That's electrical tape that someone went out there and marked that it's the bike trail starts here kind of thing. So people are definitely using the bike trail and wanting to designate that as well. And so, again, the mixture of uses, here's the northwest corner of Pine Street and Canaveral. So this is a church here in the foreground, and then in the background there's another home that's undergoing renovation. So there's a lot of, in your typical kind of development pattern around the rest of the city, you don't necessarily see this type of setup where it's a church or a commercial use next to a single family home. But this neighborhood, because of when it was originally developed and the layout of it, it's kind of conducive to allow this kind of mixing of uses. Moving on, this is Pine Street near De Leon Avenue. This is an industrial building, again, right next to a single-family home. And then we have, here we go. This is on Tropic Street near Robbins Avenue. Again, this is a single-family home right next to a few duplexes or multifamily units. Just a difference in development time period. So the multifamily has garage doors facing out towards the street, whereas the single-family home has its front door directly on the sidewalk, which is typical of older homes that were built, when this neighborhood was originally developed. And then this is an interesting one. This is De Leon and Pine Street. So on the left-hand side, you have an industrial building. In the center, you have the FP&L power substation, and then on the right-hand side, you have single-family uses. So there really is a true mix of a little bit of everything in this area. And so what we're trying to address is a way to ensure that new development is respective of older development, that it doesn't cause any issues, things like that. And so with the input of the public, we intend to basically moving forward draft an ordinance that will be brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission and, of course, City Council, and then take those through the adoption hearings. We've been notifying the public, anyone that's been interested every time we have one of these public meetings. We've had pretty good turnout. And we intend to keep doing that. And also, people are able to view all of the documents on the city's website, and they can also submit comments through that website as well. And so, it's just a quick update. That's basically where we're at now. I intend to bring back here in probably about a month or 6 weeks the ordinance, hopefully for at least the first round of review, and then potentially it may go a little longer than that. But with that, I'll be glad to try and answer any questions you have. And
Any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes, no?
Yeah, I do, sir.
Okay. Go ahead.
So just, and when it comes back to ordinance, I would, have to go a little bit further. I guess one of the biggest things is that it's a hodgepodge at best. And what just from a public standpoint, I don't know of anybody who I don't think that there are going to be a lot of folks coming out to kind of advocate on their behalf as a community on changes that could enhance the community. I don't foresee that. And part of that is because there's so much commercial in there, or industrial, take your pick. And so the one thing that I just, within that area, is I think that because there is so much industrial or there is so much commercial, that what you don't get is eyes on the community round the clock, which means that whatever residents are there, it's sparse at best, even if they're just property owners renting to other people.
Sure.
And so whatever through zoning or changing zoning or adding to whatever it can be, the question I have is how will it enhance community engagement from people, I guess, actually being there more than from 9 to 5. Because I think that that's a problem within that area, is that once you get to 5 o'clock, a lot of folks check out. The ones that are there's a lot of rentals. And so
Sure.
from specific homeowners, there's some, but that's on my mind.
Sure, and I can tell you that other people that have attended our public meetings, they have mirrored those thoughts as well. And so from a zoning standpoint, I'm not sure exactly how much we can control of that, but our intent is hopefully to get more people interested in that area and hopefully being willing to come in and either establish new residences or things like that so that we get that more of a complete community of eyes on the street more and things like that, which is the goal.
Thank you.
Member Nelson?
I just wanted to say thank you, Trevor. This looks like something that could give you headaches.
No, it's been
It
actually
looks like a challenge.
it's been a very good process. The community seems, or the members that have come out and spoken, all seem to be more or less on the same page and are happy the trail's here, happy that we're making changes to support them, and so hopefully that continues.
I think so. I think this is going to be a nice area.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Accept the motion to accept the presentation.
So moved.
The motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Downtown parking study.
CPH was contracted to provide a downtown parking study and provide recommendations to address any concerns found during that study. This presentation is a draft review of the study for input from City Council prior to finalization. It's recommended that City Council review and provide input to the downtown parking study presentation. Mr. Cook and CPS representative.
I'd like to introduce with CPH Incorporated our traffic engineer, Ms. Sandra Gorman, who will be going over a presentation on the downtown traffic study.
Good evening.
Good afternoon. Sandra Gorman. I'm a registered traffic engineer in the state of Florida. Just, how do I start this? Oh, there we are. All right. What's the purpose of the parking study? Well, our scope had several goals identified. First, it was to identify what the current parking supply is. What do you have in downtown? How is it currently being used? Where are people parking? What are the patterns? That's what we needed to identify first, and that's what we're here to talk about today. From there, we're going to be gathering some community input, talking to local businesses, local residents that live in that area to see what their concerns are, because the data can only tell us part of the story. And then we'll be looking at what the future land use patterns and what your development plans are for downtown and what your future ideas and plans as far as land use go. And then our final step is to provide you with actual recommendations of what you may or may not need to do to either accommodate all of your future parking needs or adjust maybe some of the troublesome patterns and issues we're seeing. What was the study area? You're going to see a lot of aerials, so I put a map just so you can get a better idea. From the north, it's Garden Street. On the south, it's South Street. To the east, it's the railway line, and then to the west, it's the railway line, and to the east, it's basically the river. So that's the area that we were looking at for the study. We broke down the study area into several smaller sections that we're calling sections and rows. I'm not going to get into all of that specifically tonight. I'll just refer to general areas so you can follow a little bit easier. But that allowed us to identify some specific patterns we were seeing and nail them down to certain areas. But that's basically how we broke it down. So what have we done so far? Data collection. We went out and we actually studied how many parking spaces there were, as well as how many cars are parked in those spaces at certain specific times. To do that, we actually used some new technology. We used drone technology. We actually flew drones over downtown and were able to then bring that back in-house and count the occupied parking spaces. In the old days, we used to go out and just walk up and down the streets and physically count the cars. The good thing about the drone technology is it allowed us to really kind of continue to revisit that raw data to really kind of get a better evaluation as opposed to just the data collection sheets where we had little X's where cars were parked. In conjunction with city staff, we looked at 3 peak times, a Thursday evening, a Friday evening, and a Saturday morning. We specifically chose when there was a festival happening downtown. I believe it was the 7th annual Sea Turtle festival that was happening that particular weekend. The reason we did that is because we were trying to identify what is the worst possible case, what's the peak time for parking downtown, and what's going to draw more folks there, but a street festival. So the parking supply, what did we include in the parking supply in the area? We did include both private and public on-street and off-street parking. We did not include individual residences. So in the southeast, where against the river, where you've got some homes down there, we didn't include their driveways and things like that. But Titusville Towers and some of the multifamily residential developments, we did. The idea behind that was if people are going to park illegally during these peak times, they're going to do it in a parking lot, and we want to see if that was something that was happening. For the parking supply, there are certain areas to the north, I'm calling it the northwest quadrant for our presentation tonight, where on-street parking is allowed. Think, Palm Street, Pine Street. On-street parking is allowed, but as opposed to the east side of downtown where you have your on-street parking clearly marked and delineated, it's not really marked there. It's just you can park in this general area. We did note that on-street parking is allowed there, but for our actual supply number, we did not quantify it, and I'll explain to that when I show you as to why that decision was made. Okay, so let's go through our daily observations. Thursday, June 8th, we flew the drones between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., so for that 2-hour peak. The peak demand was at 5 o'clock, which wasn't unexpected for a Thursday evening. That's the end of the business day. And at that point, you had about 500 spaces occupied, which was about a 28% occupancy, so just under 30%. When we looked at Thursday over the course of the 2 hours, our average demand was just over 400 vehicles, and then our 85th percentile, which us engineers like to use as design standards, was about 25%, or 430 vehicles. What patterns did we observe? The demand drastically dropped after 5 p.m. So we went from about 500 vehicles, we dropped over 100 vehicles in that next 15 minutes. So we definitely did see that pattern where, 5 o'clock, end of the day, everybody sort of scampered. Along Mariners Way, which is that road right behind the retail on Washington, we did see a pattern for almost the entire evening of vehicles standing in the loading areas that are specifically signed for loading areas. I point that out because that is one of the things that we consistently saw through all 3 days of data collection. So it's only a few spaces, but it was one of those things that we did see. And then, again, the northwest quadrant, our calculations were showing that it was over, there was more parking than was available, but again, that's because it's not clearly delineated, and I'll show you that closely. Here's what the composite aerial of that looked like at 5 o'clock, and I'm going to zoom in on some areas for you because I can tell that doesn't really do much. Here's what I'm speaking about with Mariners Way. Is there a thing that I can point on into here? You see the crescent shape, and then down on the south side, you can see some vehicles in that loading area. And then on the north side, before the intersection, you can actually see a couple of vehicles that are parked. Those vehicles are parked. They're not traveling in the right-of-way. They're parked illegally in a no parking, no standing zone. And again, we saw that pattern pretty regularly throughout the course of the 3 days that we observed. Oh, did I not? No, I'm missing one. So on Friday, June 9th, that was the Sea Turtle Festival. We had a peak parking demand of around 7:30 in the evening. We observed from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and around 7:30, we had about 897 parking spaces occupied, which is almost half of your parking supply. The average demand for Friday evening was 832 vehicles, with the 85th being 884. In short, Friday night was your busiest time of all 3 days, and we were at about 40 to 50% occupancy throughout the evening. Staging area for the vendors, we noticed that was being held in the pedestrian courts along between Washington Street and Mariners Way. We didn't really find any issue with that. That's obviously, we didn't see that at any other time other than during when the festival was going on. So obviously that's a staging area for vendors and vendor traffic, but I just thought I would point it out because when you see it on the aerials, it can be a little jarring to see a truck in the middle of a pedestrian area. The highest demand location is exactly where you would have expected it to be, surrounding Washington Street. Most of the on-street and off-street public parking in that immediate vicinity was fully utilized, with some of the public parking over by the Barrington House was still available. Some public parking down here by City Hall was also still available. But what we saw was in the northwest quadrant, we saw a lot more on-street parking during this time than we had at any other, which again, we associate with the festival. And if you look, you can see the little tents and things along Washington Street. Obviously, the street was closed. Here's Washington, the area, where it was most utilized. Some things to point out: the crescent-shaped public parking area is completely full. The on-street parking along Main Street is completely full, and then to the north, the off-street parking adjacent to the park there was also, I think there was one space available up there. So you can see the public parking is being fairly well utilized. You can see over by Barrington House there is a few spaces available over there, but in that general area, that's where the demand was, and we were seeing that's where the demand was met. One of the patterns that we noticed is at Titusville Towers, which is that tall square on the bottom right there. There was plenty of available parking there. What that says to us just from the raw data is that people aren't really parking there for these festivals. We're not seeing that, obviously. If we would have seen that at 100% occupancy or even close to it, it would have jumped out at me immediately as being, okay, we've got folks that are parking here and maybe they shouldn't be because that's not where we want them. But we really didn't see that. The other space, and I'm going to go back, that we saw that too is the Wells Fargo, which is in kind of that little notched out area. On the south side, you've got some parking, some folks parking there that we assumed were associated with the festival because obviously it was after banking hours on a Friday. But again, most of the parking was concentrated in those public areas. Here's the northwest quadrant that I was talking about. You can see throughout the north side there's really not anything, but in the bottom right corner, you can see a lot of on-street parking right there, and we think that was associated with the festival. It doesn't seem to be causing any problems, but one of the things that we noticed about the on-street parking in that area is because it's not delineated, because you don't have the striping showing people where they can or can't park, we were noticing it was very sort of haphazard and inefficient. So you could actually get some more parking out of that area if it was delineated more clearly where folks can park. And you can see on the top left corner there was an RV or a bus there. They were parked there all weekend. So again, if you had it delineated, that would be something that would have been taking up that entire, parking area. Again, when you have it clearly delineated, you have some residential in that area, you would be making sure that people also aren't blocking their driveways and things like that. Saturday, again, the Sea Turtle Festival was happening, but the demand was far less than what we saw on Friday. Friday was definitely higher. At noon, we saw the peak demand of about 534 spaces, again, roughly under 30%, with the average demand just under 500 and the 85th percentile at about 517. Again, the staging area for the vendors, we saw the same thing. Again, because we didn't see anything like that on Thursday, we could clearly say it's obviously from the festival, and it's not an ongoing issue that people are parking in their pedestrian areas, obviously. The highest demand by location, again, was around Washington Street, but unlike Friday evening, it wasn't at full capacity. There was still plenty of public parking available, very convenient to the festival. And again, there is Saturday's aerial. And here you can see, if you look, you can see there are some spaces in that crescent area. The angled parking up by the park is not completely full. Your on-street parking on Main Street even had a couple of available spaces there. So the public parking, again, is being well utilized, but on Saturday the demand wasn't as high as Friday, which I'll be honest, surprised me. I thought Saturday would be just as high, if not higher. Here's just a summary, again, of all of those numbers. Overall, your parking supply is adequate for what's happening down there now. The public parking seems to be very well placed for where the demand is. There was adequate public parking. There were places for people to go. The only place we saw people parking that would have been considered private was at the Wells Fargo on Friday night. That was completely empty on Saturday. We didn't see that at all on Saturday. Again, because Wells Fargo is closed during those hours, that's something that probably could be negotiated and coordinated with them if they don't have a problem with it. You know, it's not going to be an issue. Oh, didn't mean to go backwards. So I was already going into that. So what are some general observations and things we can point out now? I've already mentioned continuing that pattern of on-street striping for the areas that don't currently have it. Pine Street, Palm, those areas that currently don't have that delineation. You know, you guys are obviously going through and repaving and making those improvements. Continuing that in those areas would probably just help keep things as efficient as possible. One thing that it wasn't in our scope to look at was during the daytime, the parking patterns. But I have been out here during the day, and I have looked at it, and I will tell you that the on-street parking on the west side, we saw little to no on-street parking on the southwest side near the county building during our peak times that we were looking at, because obviously the county building's not being used. But during the day, that was very heavily parked with the on-street parking. So again, not specifically part of our scope, but that continuing that on-street striping would also help that. I also saw some folks that were parked illegally because one of the signs was knocked upside down, and that whole area was supposed to be no parking. It was all full. So again, having that striping continue as you continue repaving projects would be something to consider. And then the other thing that I can say jumped out at me was Mariner Way, the area behind the shops that's supposed to be used for loading and unloading. There were consistently vehicles that were parked there and standing there that were not delivery vehicles. They were not, you know, there to, you know, unload for those folks. And it may be useful to consider either upping enforcement in that area or just signage, additional signage to make it a little bit more clear. The striped loading areas are signed, but again, I was out there even just this afternoon and there were 2 cars parked out there. So it's just, you know, it's a very convenient spot for people to park, even though the parking lot is right there and the parking lot had plenty of spaces during these times. So what are the next steps? We continue to gather community input. We have the meetings with the residents and the business owners because, again, the data can only tell us half of the story. Like I said, Titusville Towers is a perfect example. The data is telling me that folks really aren't parking there when they shouldn't be. But maybe the residents have a completely different story to tell, or the management has a completely different story to tell, and they are seeing a pattern that, you know, we couldn't see. But the Thursday night numbers in that area were similar to the Friday night, so that also tells us a story. We evaluate future land use patterns and development patterns with staff to identify, okay, you have about 1,800 parking spots out here now. As we redevelop these, you know, areas that are due for redevelopment, as we look at the future land use map, how many of those spaces are we going to lose? How many spaces might we gain based on the parking code for the mixed use area? And kind of determine, will that be adequate, or do we need to provide additional parking somewhere? And then we provide the recommendations for future parking needs. But as of right now, you've got some good parking. The public parking is in really good locations for where the demand is being seen. And there you go. And I'm ready for any questions.
Did you make any projections? I'm not sure how you could do it, but as far as the cars that will come in with the trails being opened, bike trails, bicycle
Not yet.
trails?
That's part of the next step, is to do those projections. And there actually are ways we can do that.
That's great.
There's some parking, it's called parking generation. It's just such a weird name. But basically, the Institute of Transportation Engineers has studied parking and travel patterns for just about anything you'd want to know, so that help you project. And we would be looking into that data to say, okay, we're going to have a trails project. What are the different types of parking needs as well as traffic patterns that we might expect to see? And do we need to adjust any of the public parking to accommodate for that future demand? But that's part of that next step where we look at the future land use, because we're also going to be looking at what kind of increase in maybe commercial development or, you know, anything else that's going to be happening down there and how their parking would be addressed.
I believe that's going to be very substantial, because we did go over to Winter Garden. Now they have had their trail. They have only one trail for 10 years, and according to their Parks and Rec, they get 50,000 people a month on average.
I can tell you from, I've done some work with the Pinellas Trail. I've done some work with Polk County's Rails to Trails, you know, a long time ago. And I can tell almost always when those were being developed, you know, 10, 15 years ago, they were massively underparked. They really didn't anticipate the demand that these things were going to have. You would see trailheads that would have, you know, 4 or 5 parking spaces, and on busy weekends,
Can
they're
you extrapolate
well
some
over
numbers
there.
for us based on what they saw, an increase? And
I could, but because I haven't looked at those numbers in a long time, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I can tell you that Pinellas County, the Pinellas Trail, what they had projected it to do and what it's doing now, it's continued to grow beyond their expectations. So, I mean, the Pinellas Trail started, well over 10, 15 years ago, and what they had projected, what they look at today, they hadn't even imagined what it was going to be.
I didn't hear your last.
What they projected originally when they first conceived of the Pinellas Trail a couple of decades ago, it's far exceeded that now.
And that's
but again, general consciousness about biking and walking and more pedestrian friendly has also evolved over that same time period. So some of the assumptions they were putting into that 15 years ago are vastly different than what we would now. We've learned.
But both of those had one trail. We have three.
Yes, no,
So
that is true.
It
But
should develop quicker, and with what we have, a refuge, ocean, space center, all the
no,
things.
absolutely, and that's where the Institute of Transportation Engineers and their data is invaluable, because what they do is they go out and study trails not only all over the state of Florida, but all over the country, and they look at what type of amenities are associated with each of these trails. And so we can look at their data and say, ours are going to be closer to what happened here, and we can look at what their parking data is. And what they do is the same type of numbers I just presented, ITE presents that for various types of trails, parks.
Right.
And we can say, okay, for a trail with our projected population, we need, 5 spaces per, I always say per 1,000 square feet, but for so many acres of park, we need X amount of spaces. For so many acres of trailhead, and that's how they would do it. They would do it by acres of the area where the trails come
Well, that's
together.
great. You'll be looking at it, because I think it's going to be a very important part of what's
Oh
going
no,
on in
absolutely,
Titusville. So,
absolutely.
thank you.
The first step is identifying, what you have out there and where it is.
Member Stokel, I think you were up.
Thank you. You kind of touched on this at the end a little bit, but one of your slides says demand drops significantly after 5 p.m.
On Thursday.
Okay, so did you have, and that's where I'm going with this, did you have any numbers for that Monday through Friday daytime hours?
No, our scope was to
Okay.
look at 3 specific peak periods, and we worked with staff to identify those peaks.
Okay.
And the concern was we really wanted to capture when the highest demand would be, and that it was identified that we should be looking at when there were street festivals and we were getting that concentrated traffic into downtown. So those peak periods were coordinated with staff.
Okay.
But I did do some just qualitative,
Gotcha.
I went through the area during the day as well, just so I had an idea of the differences, because
Okay.
I thought maybe that question would come up.
And then I think you said you had 1,818 spots, including illegal spots?
No, it's on-street parking.
Okay.
That's clearly striped. Public parking
Okay.
areas, and then private parking lots that are clearly striped parking lots. Let me,
Okay.
can I go back to this? Oh, okay.
It's okay if not.
No, it's okay, but there's a lot of areas where you've got vacant lots.
Okay.
Those were not counted as any sort of parking area. Could somebody pull up there and park there?
Okay, so
yeah,
you
probably,
just
but we
included the
did not-
legal spots
We just
where
included
citizens
legal
know that
spots.
they can park. Okay.
But again, we did include the private and the public, and when we have our final report, we'll have that breakdown of this is so many private, so many public, and what times those businesses are operating. Because one of the things you want to look at with future demand, is there any way to share parking? Wells Fargo parking lot near the park is a very perfect example of that. They're closed, after, they're closed on Saturday afternoons, they're closed on Sundays, they're closed in the evenings. A shared parking, therefore you don't have a whole lot of extra pavement that you don't need when you're trying to create a pedestrian-friendly environment.
Okay.
Any other questions? I see none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to the next report. Item F, sir. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, just from I guess the stat, was there any additional guidance that we needed to provide, or?
Do you have any that you want to provide? Well, I can't give them any more information than they gave us at this point. Item F, sir.
On 14 February 2017, Council approved advisability to grant funds for the expansion of the Space Coast Fab Lab Project-Based Learning Incorporated. This agreement between the City of Titusville and Project-Based Learning Incorporated requires a report to be made to council before approving payment for reimbursement of equipment purchases for the Fab Lab. Also attached is proof of insurance and equipment that has been installed on site as required by the agreement. And I believe we have Mr. Beavers here to provide your presentation.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Well,
If you will state your name and...
David Beavers, Project-Based Learning.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had our grand opening in June on the 17th. I think about half of you attended. I think we had between 300 and 400 people in attendance at the grand opening. We actually started a little bit before that. Our first activity at Fab Lab was actually a field trip. And I think we'd mentioned before, we do field trips with schools and homeschool organizations. And this one happened to be a Montessori school out of the Virgin Islands. We originally worked with them out of Palm Bay. They were up doing some things, I believe, with Patrick, and then came through for a STEM camp. And that was about 3 weeks before the grand opening. Since then, we've done a number of field trips. The last field trip, as a matter of fact, was Thursday with a homeschool group. And at these field trips, they do everything from laser cutting to 3D prints, a myriad of activities, snap circuits, basic electronics. We have the two primary classrooms up and running. We've had classes in laser fabrication, SolidWorks, Tinkercad, Arduino. Right now, what is absolutely functional and usable out there are laser fabrication, mills, lathes, wood shop. Now, when I say all of that is operational, let me be very clear. It's a work in progress. It's not all operational at once. So our classes are phasing in based on what we have available. The computers, the Tinkercad follows into the SolidWorks, follows into the Arduinos, into the basic computer classes. That was one of the first. The laser fabrication, and that ties into the computers, and then it ties into some of the woodworking and the building and even the electronics. So it's building on a base. What we have not done are the welding classes or the machine shop classes at this point. Now, having said that, we have aligned, and we do have the Lincoln Electric curriculum that is in place. We are independent, and one of the few places you can go and become certified without a curriculum or a course outline now. So we do have that available, as well as basic machine shop and basic use and safety classes. But we have to schedule those simply from a power requirement. We can do machine shop, but we can't do laser. We will this coming month as that's being done, but if we plug in everything, it collapses. So we have to pick and choose, and it's kind of grown by need and response to what the youngsters and the parents and people demand. We put a lot of different classes out and available. What is coming in very, very fast are the actual field trips now with the schools and Brevard schools as well, because we're back in session now. So that's where we are currently. We are open every day except Sunday and Monday now. And we have a pretty good following. I would say in actual classes outside of the grand opening, we've had less than 200 students come through on either a STEM activity or a classroom. We expect to eclipse that number monthly now with school in, though. So we're really just beginning with the classes. And I think we have a pretty good direction. It will be different than the other locations. As I said, it's driven by need and want. But we're going to be doing a lot more of the younger K-12 activities here than the senior design type projects.
I don't know if Kevin told you, I was about a month ago, I guess I was over there on Sunday, and the place is really filled up.
Well, you came at the end of he called and told me, and sadly I was down in Rockledge.
That's fine. I think it was a Sunday or something.
We did open a Rockledge location, but one of the neat things and one of the concerns, how is that going to compete? And I was very happy you walked in. He said, well, it was kind of funny. He came in, he said, and right as the other people were coming in, because Rockledge isn't open on the weekends, and it's actually pulling people from Rockledge up here. So, and Rockledge is purely computers. It's the machine shop would go in one of these small rooms. It's about
Yeah, there were a
10 by
couple of
12.
young fellows from Rockledge.
So it really is a different demographic, but it's used to pull people in, and it's one of the things that we do. The things that I supplied to InBeds were the and I gave a copy that y'all can have, but the advertisements we're doing and the classes that we're pushing, these are being advertised up in Ormond and Daytona, as well as Orlando now. So we're pulling people into a lot of these classes. So the idea is to bring people to Titusville with us.
Great. Member Diesel?
First of all, very exciting. When I was at the grand opening, as I was leaving, I saw 3 kids going to a walk, 3 boys, walking and then jogging and then sprinting. And I had to stop and say, are they really sprinting to get to this? And I want to tell you what, that was impressive. It was like the old days when me and my guys used to run to the ball field or wherever it may be. They were running to your location. And I went home and told my wife about that. I said, this place is going to take off. Secondly, the thing I remember maybe most about my visit on the grand opening was it was hot. How's the air conditioning doing? Is there any air conditioning?
There is air. Obviously, the inside has plenty of air conditioning. The shop, we have the air conditioning units. We have 4 different chillers and the equipment ready to go. We are stalled on power. Our big problem, frankly, and what my intended use on the reimbursement is to have the power drawn. We have plenty of power. It's simply to wire it safely, and that's not something we'll do ourselves. That must be contracted. We have, for 4 years at PBO, had a 0 accident or safety issues. So it needs to be done correctly. We have a lot of different things out there that are powered, so we must use a contractor, and that's about $12,000 to have it done right.
Well, good luck with that. And again, the passion I saw from those kids running is the same passion I saw as you were presenting.
I believe if three younger, that would have been Prosper, Moosey, and the last one escapes our name, but they're building rockets with strain gauges printed in them. They're working with Cyber Factoring on a project to actually embed the electronics in the rockets. Those are all 3 students from FIT as well. They're international students, but they are excited. They're doing some neat things. They're really building.
Well, amazing stuff. Keep up good work.
Member Nelson?
Mr. Beavers has been kind enough to offer to let me go into one of his classes, and I would suggest that we all go. He offered to teach me how. No?
No, I have 3 more openings in that class. You may pick any 3 for Saturday for an Arduino. But
I can only pick 3?
But the class is only 9 in size. So,
okay.
And the rest are youngsters. For those of you who like to work with youngsters, you're welcome to come out Saturday.
We could auction it off.
Highest bidder?
Highest bidder. But Mr. Beavers has also offered to teach me how to make a dragon pistol.
Yes.
A what?
A dragon pistol.
It's a dragon cannon. And what it is, it's a rubber band
this, guys?
ping pong.
Weaponry.
I'm thinking they should go with us.
Everybody smiles.
It looks like an old cannon, and they make it on the laser cutter, and then they assemble it, and it works on a rubber band and ping pong balls.
Oh, okay.
It's very artistic and ornate.
It's safe, but I sort of figured these guys might like it.
Okay.
I know a bunch of people that want one. But thank you. I think you're doing great.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. So I just a couple questions, kind of nuts and bolts questions. So one, just reconfirming or reaffirming, I'm going to try like this. So all the equipment that's been purchased has been purchased and is currently housed or staying in the Titusville location?
It's been inspected at least once. It is housed. I believe there's a UCC1 filing paper that was submitted with it so that you could have a lien on it.
Right.
And I think it needs, by our agreement, it stays 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably like to get rid of that a little earlier than 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you can imagine the first time you mowed a lawn,
Mm-hmm.
you hit that first rock.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a training environment.
Mm-hmm.
These lawnmowers are going to hit rocks all day long.
Yeah, that's fair.
So they're not going to last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, they're on property, on site,
Okay.
and they've been inspected a number of times to verify that.
And can you just help me and just to clarify in the power? Can you help me understand that? Because what I'm hearing is
power is adequate. So
Okay.
we can power up the welders, we can power up the lasers, we can power up for any given class, we can power up everything we have.
Right.
We cannot do them all at once because we don't have the physical number of outlets
Gotcha.
to plug it in on a single circuit.
I appreciate that. And then the next question was not part of the agreement, so it's only for personal knowledge. So only if you. And I've had students that have been to the fab, and it was definitely a memorable experience for them, which is really cool to hear in the classroom. I guess one of my questions is, of the 200 or so, we'll say in a month, that come through in a month, are you getting a feel for new versus returning? Meaning, if I'm somebody that comes 4 times a month, great, versus how many people come one-time shot and then not coming?
What we did is we went to a membership, and we have a membership base, and for a lot of reasons, they need to be a member for. Now it's open for classes and open for courses to anybody, but a member is a way to track repetitive use. But it's also a way to keep things safe. So their membership card activates the laser or activates the equipment that they're using. And we did go, so it's not completely free. We do charge a membership. It's a whopping $10, which basically pays for their electronic card. In the alternative, they can volunteer a couple hours and pay for their membership. It's more about tracking than it is anything else. But yes, we have a very good handle on repeat and follow-up. And what, believe it or not, the vast growth comes from the field trips, but it's not the kids on the field trips. And I'll send it to you, but I have a number of the Facebook comments and things. Gee, this is a wonderful program. Do they take adults? And the answer is yes. And we get an amazing number of adult referrals, sibling referrals. And so when you bring a group of 30 children out on a field trip, by definition, it's generally 15 adults are there. Those aren't teachers. Those are volunteer parents as well. And they bring the family back. So actually, what we thought was just a fun thing to do was our best marketing tool ever, bringing these kids out to the lab.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. Sounds like things are coming along great.
Thank you.
You need a motion, sir?
I do, sir, to receive the report and direct staff to provide reimbursement payment.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Member Diesel, I think. All right. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Like sign. Passes unanimously. Letters of appreciation.
Yes, sir. For the record, I'd like to read the letters of appreciation for the month of July. Mandy Lamoth from Community Development, Eddie Gilnaldo, KB Ufoso, Edie McCall, Mariana Histrofa, Tracy Davis, Rose Koning, and from our customer service, Carrie Beatty, Judy Decker, and Jessica Trevzera.
You get it?
Got it.
Okay. Next item is police spotlight.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is our month. It's 2016, a year in review, but we might have bled over into 17 a little bit. So if we could play the video.
On behalf of the dedicated men and women of the Titusville Police Department, we are proud to present our department's 2016 Year in Review.
Through our strong partnership with our citizens, the individual effort of each member of our team, and the tremendous support we receive from our city manager and council members, we were able to accomplish many goals over the course of the year.
One of our major accomplishments this past year was the outfitting of every uniformed officer in the city with a body camera. After a year of testing equipment and evaluating policies, we were proud to roll out what we believe is a very sound program which furthers our continued commitment to being as transparent as possible. During our research, we found that the greatest challenge of this program is not the equipment cost, but the ability to store the massive amount of video footage recorded by officers. Body cam video generates a tremendous amount of data that must be retained and available for public records requests as required by Florida law. The accompanying software that was purchased with the body cams allows our records and evidence staff to keep up with the numerous requests for footage made by the public, defense attorneys, and by the state attorney's office for use at trial. The use of these body cams has the benefit of providing a true and accurate account of officer interactions with the public and has cleared numerous officers from unfounded complaints.
Personnel development has been a major focus for the department this past year, with a special emphasis placed on leadership training. In 2016, the FBI chose Titusville to be a regional host training site for their Law Enforcement Executive Development Program, considered the finest program in the nation for law enforcement supervision. Because of our partnership, TPD received 12 slots for leadership courses at no cost to the city.
Other important training highlights include the Individual First Aid Kit Certification Program, made possible through a partnership with Parish Medical Center. This crucial training instructs every officer in the use of tourniquet and life-saving kits they carry to treat severely wounded victims. Both the training and equipment are fully funded by PMC. Because police officers are often the first to arrive at a scene, this training has already helped save lives and will continue to do so in the future.
One of the things we are most proud of at TPD is our commitment to community outreach. Some of the biggest events held this year include our annual National Night Out event held in the Target parking lot in October, and our Partnership in the Park event at Isaac Campbell Park. Both are tremendous opportunities for our department members to meet face-to-face with our citizens, build goodwill, and discuss their concerns. Our Coffee with the Chief and Coffee with Police Officer are very popular events hosted by various establishments during the year, giving citizens the opportunity to discuss topics concerning their neighborhoods. Our Kids and Cops basketball competition was held at Jackson Middle School, with students taking on officers in a basketball game in the school's gym. And yes, it got very competitive. Our Commitment to Seniors in Law Enforcement Together, or SALT program, features our department members volunteering their time on weekends to assist seniors in need. As a component of our continued accessibility and community outreach, we are always excited to give the citizens we serve a behind-the-scenes look at police headquarters during our many department tours.
Lock it or lose it. This crime prevention campaign has been a great success for Titusville. Encouraging community members to lock their cars at all times is imperative, since a majority of auto thefts and vehicle burglaries involve cars which have been left unlocked. Our billboard design contest, which took in submissions from local elementary school students, went a long way to promoting this important message. In our community, a child's well-being is always a top priority. As part of our commitment to student safety, each year we visit various schools during the first week of class to help raise safety awareness. During those first days of school, all available personnel are assigned to school zones to ensure a high visible presence and to let both students and parents know we are here and we care.
A clear favorite among the men and women of our agency is our annual Shop with a Coffee event. It was a huge success. This past December, 50 local children, nominated by local elementary school faculty, were given a $100 shopping spree at Walmart. Each child is paired with a department volunteer, then taken to McDonald's on buses provided by Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, where they are treated to breakfast. Then it's off to shop at Walmart. Funding for this great outreach is provided by the Titusville Police Youth Foundation and Walmart.
We are absolutely committed to the concept that information sharing and relationship building are the strongest tools we have to prevent criminal activity. The more our community practices effective crime prevention techniques and the stronger our relationships are with citizens, the more successful we will be at preventing crime in our city. The use of forfeiture funds, which is money derived from criminal seizures, is continually utilized to help enhance new public safety programs. This past year, we were able to purchase 2 radar speed trailers that can be placed along our roadways to make drivers aware of their speed. We also obtained a large roadside notification board that can be used to communicate important information to drivers. These roadside signs were fully funded using department forfeiture funds. Many challenges still lie ahead for us this year, especially with the recent significant growth in our city. With the demands on our service level increasing, we need to increase our resources. As our city boundaries and population grow, we continue to operate with virtually the same number of officers and dispatchers as we had 30 years ago. The increase in homes and business activity has significantly elevated the demand of our services, and we must plan for our future and increase our resources. In one example, our 911 communication center requires a minimum of 26 dispatchers based on our community's required service levels. However, we currently only have 20 positions funded. This shortage causes an excessive amount of built-in overtime to ensure we maintain minimum staffing levels. We recognize this is not fiscally responsible moving forward, nor is it good for our employees' morale when they are faced with little opportunity to take time off. One area that we were able to make progress on this past year was adding 2 more full-time police officer positions through the budget process. Considering we currently have a deficit of 12 officers to meet the state average of 1 officer per 1,000 residents, we hope to continue this momentum each budget year. We have also recently applied for a federal COPS grant that will fund 4 new officer positions over the next 3 budget years. Our administration has worked diligently on this grant application, and we are confident in our chance of obtaining it. Another thing we are excited about for this coming year is the increase in our school resource officer program to include coverage at all 4 elementary schools in Titusville. 2 veteran officers have now received specialized SRO training, and they will split their time between 2 elementary schools each. Having a full-time SRO assigned to every school in Titusville has been an important goal for us, and we look forward to working with the Brevard County Public Schools in the future to ensure this resource is attained. Going forward, we will continue to recruit the best possible candidates for the organization and foster an environment of ongoing training and process improvement.
We are eager and excited to meet the many challenges ahead. It is our primary goal to provide the best possible public safety service to our community.
Together, we can all keep Titusville a safe and enjoyable place to live and work. Thank you.
Very good, sir.
A big thank you to Media Services. They are really clicking on all cylinders. And Amy, everyone's gotten to know Amy throughout the city, and we could not survive without her.
Any comments?
The fire department may be looking for you.
You know, it stinks.
They're asleep.
They're asleep. Wait a minute.
Stinks when you go second. They struck first.
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Member Diesel?
Yeah, just a couple things as I see the video, and it pertains so true. Just recently, the start of school, the Titusville Police Department and the fire department were at the front entrance, the back entrance. I just was amazed. I actually took a couple pictures of it. It was outstanding. Lieutenant House and one of your last hellos to everybody. Goodbye, I guess. But it was awesome, truly awesome. And I don't think that we can even understand how big that is to high school kids. You know, sometimes we focus on all these elementary kids that love this stuff. Those high school kids were talking about that, and it's very important. I digress to the hurricane. I was at, excuse me, I was stationed at the Imperial Estates shelter, and we had constant police support, and the people who were there were just so comforting, and it wasn't like they just came and they sat and they did their job. They were everywhere, and so impressed with that. And then the SRO program, which this is my 35th year at Titusville High School. Don't remember when we started it, but it's been a long time. It's irreplaceable and invaluable. It's not just just today we had a little something going on, and Titusville Police was there to be extremely supportive. The SRO helped lead the way for us. And then, of course, we had a little issue out front with an accident out front. And Titusville Police is just always there. I mean, you can count on you guys for whatever it is. Waving at the front, SRO, hurricane. I'm just so impressed. We're blessed. That's the best way to put it. We are blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. So are we.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I truly, for everybody in the department, I can't thank you enough for and all of the officers. You know, you just look around at all the different things going on all around the nation, and there's no good reason why that couldn't be happening here. And the quite frankly answer is it's what you all are doing in order to build those relationships, in order to help citizens feel protected, and to make it more than just some random guy down the street. It's evidence in everything that you showed up there, but I can't say enough. I've come across enough where I've had enough personal interaction with officers, just in various, and my personal interaction is that no matter what time it is, they're upbeat. They're always looking to do the right thing, and they're always looking to do a right thing with a soft hand, and that's amazing. So I really appreciate just everybody's work for that.
I would like to comment on that. Our recruiting and we have several boards. We have a group of folks that do the oral boards. We look for those people that will fit our style. There are many qualified officers that would not necessarily fit with our culture here. So this is something that started years and years ago, and we just are going to keep the momentum going, but it has been a huge success. Our recruiting and hiring really should be recognized.
If it's not broken, you need to fix it, right?
Right.
I'm just going to say this. I worked with you guys for years and years and years, and I look around and I see guys I've worked with, ladies I've worked with, and I've always been amazed that the guys have fun, they work hard. Sometimes they're not appreciated for some of the things they do and some of the situations that we put them in, but they do a great job. So we need to stand up for them.
I've only been watching you for 11 years now. I don't know what she meant by years and years and years, but you guys have always done a great job. Keep up the good work is what I got to say, and I certainly agree with everything that's been said here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Petitions or requests. Anybody from the public like to speak at this point? You have to come up here, man.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. If you would state your name.
My name is
and address.
Catherine Raines.
Address.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Could you say it again?
And Catherine, the only one that's spelled like it in the world, Cathren.
Okay.
And my last name is Raines. I live on Barner Ave in Titusville, and I originally moved here from Syracuse, New York, in '99, and it took me a while to adjust to the system and also to the heat, and I'm still not adjusted. But this is my first time ever appearing in the meeting, and I was very curious because I've always been one that like to start from the top and work my way to the bottom. And what I mean by that, the VIPs, as far as the police department, I was a meter maid for 12 and a half years up in Syracuse, so I worked at police and with them, which you can't, it's priceless when it comes to the police department or the sheriffs and the fire department. And my problem here is that I don't feel that the teachers in the fire department and the police department and the sheriff's department and the troopers and all of them, they don't get paid enough money for the positions that they do have, because it's too many of them that's getting killed that shouldn't be. But the reason,
one is too many.
Yes, one is too many. The reason I came tonight is, I don't know whether I can speak on this, but I'm trying to work on the fact that I have a dad that's going to be 96 in November. My daughter my goddaughter that's with me tonight, she has heart problem. I live next door to a lady that has, both of her legs are amputated. Next to her is a young lady that has 2 kids, and one of them was born with a defect. And that child is about 12 and probably no bigger than this. The problem we're having on our street, and I know they took it away, but if it's a thing that anyone can do, anything as far as changing the law, they took away where people drive through there, like it's an interstate or Florida Fairground where you can have a concert at, with the music so loud that it vibrates the house. The windows are shattering like it's a hurricane coming through because of the fact that they have the bass on their vehicles so loud. And from what I understand, that at one given time, there was a law that could be done something about. And I don't know.
Is this late at night, ma'am?
Pardon me?
Is it late at night that this is happening?
Oh, they start from morning until 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
There are ordinances on that, I believe.
You know, and I've
Lifetime.
spoken with some of the police officers because I like to know what the law is and what, because I'm a voter, so I can be able to voice my opinion on that. That's it.
Your time is up. Would you like additional time, ma'am?
Yes, please. And then I can,
Another minute, do?
yes, just another minute.
I have a
But,
motion?
I mean, it's at
A
a
second?
point.
1 second, ma'am. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
You got it.
It's at a point where it's disturbing people's rest. It's disturbing the kids. They're getting distracted from having to do their homework. The babies are waking up. And, I mean, it sounds, say, for instance, in your house and there's a street. And you're in your house. I live in the back. My bedroom is in the back. And you can hear the vibration. It's where now that it's interrupting sleep. And I don't want to do anything that I'm going to get in trouble for with the law. But that's the
We
point
don't want you
that
to.
it has come to.
Don't do that. Mr. City Manager, can you help this lady?
Sure, I think Chief Lau right behind you will
There you go.
be more than willing to assist. Thank you.
I would have done that. but I didn't get in trouble.
Right there.
That's the police chief right there. He's on top.
Chief?
You guys are right there.
You're the chief? All of you. So they're the ones I need to talk to?
Yes, go sit over there and tell them all to listen to you.
Well, you know, I would like to thank each one of you for listening to me because that's how frustrated it has become.
Thank you for coming.
And God bless
letting
you.
us know.
Thank you. Bye.
Next, anyone like to speak at this time? I see none. I will, at this point, oops. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
No, just a follow-up question. Specifically, whatever our ordinance is, here's in my mind what I'm thinking of when I think of noise ordinance relative to music. So is our ordinance currently, somebody is driving their car, it's music's too loud, it's bouncing through. Do we have the right to do that? Or
We do have ordinances that address it. That's correct.
I think Chief Lau's coming up to address that.
Thank you, Chief.
There used to be a statute where if it was audible beyond a certain distance, we could stop that vehicle and cite them. And through lobbying, because the stereo shops, it's almost a group, a hobby, lobbied, and now that is gone. So we do have our noise ordinance, which goes by the different times, which the mayor was alluding to earlier. But we also have some diplomatic ways to, when the car's stopped, is to talk to them and say, look, just through this stretch, turn it down. And most people we actually get some decent response from. So there's other ways that we can help this woman.
And so if it would be beneficial to discussion because if there was a tool and the tool went away, if a tool is applicable and is helpful, I'd be happy to discuss it. But your opinion, if we don't need it, we're
on a
good.
state level.
Yes,
Right.
this
It's
is
not local.
Yeah, it's
Right.
not. It would be at a state level. One of the things we track crime, and we are very good at looking at that and comparing numbers. But quality of life issues, a barking dog at 2 a.m. that's constant can make neighbors surrounding that dog miserable, and they can just they're not getting sleep and everything. So we try to work on the quality of life, even though maybe there isn't an enforcement action we can take. We can certainly take community policing action and encouragement. Sometimes it's a phone call to a landlord, and you're gonna become a nuisance or whatever. So there's other ways we can handle this, and we will certainly do everything.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Member Nelson?
Chief, is the ordinance a criminal statute or are there criminal penalties attached to it? Do you remember? Or
No,
Mr. Burr?
Some of our ordinances, yes. When we
Well,
could contract
noise.
with the state attorney's office to prosecute those and pay those to prosecute certain ones, you know. But we do have noise ordinances which wouldn't be criminal in nature.
They're
But
not
they do
criminal.
have, and we can get with the ordinance book and look at that. There are some, as you know, you have hours and decibel levels.
Correct.
There are others that can't be measured but could still be a nuisance, and we have those noises that fall in that range too.
Okay.
So we'll certainly look at that with them.
I was just wondering about the stop. Can we stop them?
Yeah, on a road like Barna Avenue, that's
Yeah.
the challenge. It's one of our biggest complaints we get is the
bet.
noise and from the stereos. So not from house to house or apartment to apartment, but cars traveling, and it is the bass, and it vibrates your whole chest. So
Would it be helpful to have a criminal ordinance if we don't have it?
Well, it'd be a non-criminal citation, but still it would give you the opportunity to encounter those individuals as a violation of that ordinance.
That works.
if the statute would come back, we used to do operations
Yeah.
where that's all we went out, Operation Silent Night, and that's all we would do is cite folks for loud stereos, but it didn't work.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Anyone else have anything? If not, next meeting will start at 7:05. I declare this meeting adjourned.